Hey there, Mr. Kyle Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. So, if you've ever wondered if you have a problem where you have an x and a y and two equations and you have to solve, and they say a system, and you're even wondering why are they calling it a system in the first place, this is for you then. This is going to be a not so much how to actually solve the system, which I can do in another video, but this is what method do I use to solve a system. How do I know which one to use? How do I know which one is the best one to use? So that's the whole point of this. And if that's what you're looking for, then that's exactly what I'm going to cover right now. So in order to figure out which one is the best, we have to talk about what are the types. So you've likely, if you've been on this topic for a little bit, heard of the big two, which are elimination, which is also called addition elimination sometimes. Addition elimination sometimes, because it is sometimes easier to add the two equations and then just to have the other equation already be negative so that stuff cancels. So sometimes it's called addition elimination. Then you have substitution. And actually, I'll leave a little bit of a space here so I can describe them and what makes them the best in what scenario. So then you have substitution. Substitution. And there's not another name that I know of for that one. Elimination and substitution are the big two. But there's actually two others, um, and it depends on how fancy you are. And I have all these examples here because I'm going to classify each one and put letters next to it. But there's graphing. There's graphing, which is one that you might have already used. Some of them are set up for graphing, and we'll talk about that in a second. And that might be something that you've done. But then there's actually a whole nother one that has to do with your calculator. So if you're a really big fan of using your calculator, you're real tech savvy, then this calculator one could be for you. Okay, and it involves using the calculator one using some math that's a little bit more complex. But you don't have to understand the math, you just have to understand how to type it into the calculator, and the calculator does the math for you. So we'll get into that in a second. But let's go back to elimination. When I was first learning this topic in school, I think that one was my favorite out of the main two here. And this one is going to be better if you have your stuff lined up, right? So better, this one's better if I'll just say stuff. If stuff is, and I didn't mean to have a dash right there. If stuff is lined up. Okay, so let's look at an example of this. So we'll use green, like a green E, for ones that are better for elimination. So let's look through a couple examples here. So this one right here, if you look right there, there's your X's, right there. There's your X's, and then right here are your Y's. There's your equal sign, and there's your numbers. You got your numbers here. The Y is here. The X is here. The equals is there. Okay, it's all lined up. Therefore, it's good for elimination. Right, so I'll put a capital E there for elimination. That one's good for elimination. And actually, so is this one. Right, X, Y equals number. X, Y equals number. This one's elimination. Elimination. And actually, all of these are because I pulled them from the same worksheet on using elimination to solve. This one is not as good for elimination because if you look here, they're all lined up. They're nice and lined up. However, in previous problems here, you didn't have to do anything to eliminate a variable. Right here, the x goes away. Here the x goes away. Here the x goes away. Here the y goes away. But here, nothing goes away if I add these. Nothing goes away if I add these. But if I negate, if I make one of these a positive, one of these a negative, then I can get it to eliminate. So you have to be careful with that. Make sure something eliminates. Otherwise, you just have another equation with x and y. And you don't need three equations with two variables It's just an extra equation for no reason. Okay, so just be careful of that. And the same thing here, we'd have to eliminate the y, but we'd have to get rid of some stuff. But it's still lined up. So that's an E. That's an E. Okay. And now substitution. Substitution. So this one is better. And I don't want to say best because everybody has like a particular method they like and they favor. And so I say normally, you know, if you really, really like substitution, or if you really, really don't like elimination, or a little mixture of both, then just go with substitution, even if it seems more difficult. Even if what I'm telling you would suggest that it's more difficult to do substitution, then just go with it. If that's the one you feel more comfortable with, stick to your guns when you can. It's good to know all the different methods, but there's definitely some truth in, like, you know, if you enjoy doing something a certain way and you can, then why not? All right, so anyways, substitution is better if a letter equals, right? So something is solved. Solved already, right? So for instance, over, let's see. I don't think I have as many examples of this one that are going to be naturally, well, not naturally occurring, but occurring because of the worksheet that I pulled up. So let's just go through and look at one where there's already a variable. So it looked like the only one that I found so far was, there's a couple right here. So I think right here, and actually these, yeah, these are the substitution ones that I found. So right here, y equals, so that means all I have to do is plug in that 6x plus 11 into here. So that would be, you know, negative 2x minus 3. And then instead of this y right here, I would put, what was that, a 6x? 6x minus 11, right? And then solve it from there. So it's already set up. You don't have to already solve. If you don't have to already solve for the variable, you can just plug it in and go. Right, so that makes it a lot easier instead of having to try to solve for a variable. So the variable is already solved. Already solved, already solved, already solved, you get the drift. Right, so substitution is a really good method for these guys. For these guys right here, because the y is already solved. And it doesn't have to be a y, it could also be an x. I don't see an example of an x on here, but it could just be x equals. If x equals something, then that would work as well. It's better if a letter equals, so it could be x or it could be y. And then if you're using something else entirely, of course, that's fine too. You know, A, B, C, D, whatever letter you want. So far for the big two, you want to use elimination if your stuff is lined up. Okay, it doesn't have to be x, y equals number. It could be number equals x, y. It could be y equals number x. It could be, you know, whatever. As long as they're both like that, both equations. And then for substitution, it works better if a letter is equaled to something already, so it's already solved. Now, for graphing, this one is kind of like elimination plus substitution equals graphing. And here's why. Because for graphing, you want y equals mx plus b. You want them to both be like that, which means that they have to be lined up, right? So actually, let me do this. I'm gonna grab this y equals mx plus b right here if I can. If it'll let me. Nah, I don't know. We'll see. Grab it right here. That's not gonna really do it. Here, I'll just write it over here real quick. So if I have y equals mx plus b, y equals mx plus b. So this is going to be good for graphing. We already know because I'm saying it is. And the reason why it's good for graphing is because it's already ready to graph. You don't want to have something that's not ready to graph and then you have to get it in a form that's ready to graph and then graph it and then hope that you know, it intersects at a place where it's really easy to tell exactly where it's intersecting. That's a whole nother story. But for elimination, you want it to be lined up. So look, y equals x and then number. Y equals x and then number. So that's good for elimination. And then of course for substitution, you want y equals, right? They're both y equals, so it would be great for substitution as well. So if it's good for graphing, that means it's good for either elimination or substitution as well. So basically, if you prefer graphing, you need to look for equations that are lined up and that are ready to solve, either x equals or y equals, and especially y equals mx plus b's. Those are like ideal. Otherwise, you have to either settle for elimination or substitution, because sometimes graphing can be annoying if it doesn't intersect at a nice, you know, whole number, or a negative whole number, aka integers. So let's go into this last one. This last one's a little bit more complicated. So use a totally different color here. But here's what you do for the calculator, okay? And I've got my calculator app open on my phone here. So basically what you do is you want to go in and you want to create a matrix. So this is good. So you want to line that up. So this is also good if it's lined up. So E for elimination. And did I use green? Let me make sure I used the right colors here. Yeah, E for elimination. And it was green, E. So it needs to be E. There needs to be a good E problem. It needs to be lined up. So it needs to be lined up. Okay? And preferably, it needs to be lined up like this. It needs to be X, and then Y, and then the equals, and then the number. Okay? And it needs to be like that for this to work. So once it's in that form, what you do, so more algebraically, this is what this would look like: ax plus by equals c, and this is what's called standard form, by the way. So what you do, here's what you type in your calculator. Once you have both equations like this, so you have two of these bad boys. So this is how you want it to look, okay? And the calculator will tell you the answer. So this is assuming that you have a graphing calculator, of course. If you don't, like I just said, I have it pulled up on an app on my phone. For iPhones, the app is free, but there's a bunch of features that are behind a paywall, which basically means that you can't do certain things unless you pay for the, you know, the paid version of the app, which is kind of lame, but you know, I digress. If you have an Android phone, meaning like a Samsung or an LG, what have you, they have a free graphing calculator app. It's actually an emulation, and it's called Wabbit Emu, which sounds really funny and it's fun to say. Wabbit Emu is the name of the app. It's got a little bunny next to a graphing calculator, and it's a free simulation. I've used it for a long time when I had an Android phone. Check that out for a free graphing calculator on your phone. And then of course, if you have a graphing calculator already, then you can just use that. So here's what you do. You can go into your matrices. So what you do is you press second. So here's step one. You press second and the matrix button. Okay. Then what you're going to do when you're in your matrix is you're going to create a new matrix. So second matrix, second matrix, there we go. So you go over to edit, go to edit, and you can click on, if you've never done this before, then you'll have just A, B, C, D, E, F, all the letters listed out, and they're all blank. There's nothing after them is what I mean. So just click on one, go to edit, and click or select one, and usually you select the first one, A, but it doesn't really matter which letter you choose. And then here's what you do. So now you input values. Okay, and actually here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to erase the A, B, and the C in the second one here, and I'm going to call this D, E, and F. So here's what you do. You just type in A, and then I'm going to put E here for enter. So E in this galaxy pen thing means enter. Press enter in your calculator. So A, enter B, enter, dot, 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 all the way to F, enter. And if there's a minus sign in front of the letter, make sure you put that in as a negative. That's really important as well. So you input all your values and you have your matrix. Okay, so that's the bulk of it. That's like the longest part. Assuming that your equation is already set up where it's ax plus by equals c. You have the x and then the y and then the equals and then the number. So once you've input all your values, then all you have to do is you go back into your matrix, so second matrix, and then you go over to math. So second matrix again. So you exit out of there once you're done, and then go back in, second matrix, and then you're going to go to math, and you're going to click on the RREF option. And you can look up what that stands for if you want. I don't want to tell you and bore you or kind of confuse you or whatever, because it's a very math sounding thing. So just trust me, that's what you want to choose, RREF option. And then what happens is you click on it. So I'm going to click on it. And then you type in the matrix. So you put in, it's got a little parentheses and a closed parentheses in there. So then you go second matrix again. Second matrix. One more time. And then the last thing is you're going to, so second matrix, and under names, you click on your matrix name. So it's most likely matrix name A unless you scrolled down and made a matrix B or C or D or whatever. And then you'll hit enter. And then you hit enter one more time. And then you hit enter. And you get your answer. So the answer will look something like this. The answer will look like this. It'll say 1, 1, 0, and then it'll have some sort of number here. And then this one will say 0, 1, and then it'll have some sort of number here. And it'll look like this. These numbers are your x and your y values. So this one is your x, this one is your y. And that is how you type it into a calculator. So that was very long. Sorry for that explanation. If you were waiting to get to some more examples here, I'm sorry that I threw that in kind of in the middle there. But that's what you would do if you wanted to do it on your calculator. So it needs to look basically like an E kind of setup in order to do this in your calculator. But it'd be the X, the Y, and then the number. So one that would be good for a graphing calculator, and I'll use your calculator. So we have C, we'll use C here, the rainbow C for calculator. So a good one for calculator would be this one right here actually. Because you have your X, your Y, so you have the X, then you have the Y, then you have the equals, and then you have the number. So that one would be good for a calculator one. So you could type it in on there. And then since it's good for the calculator one, that means it's also good for elimination because it's all lined up. Now it wouldn't be good for substitution because we don't have anything equaled. So there's no equal to X, equal to Y kind of stuff going on. So that's pretty much it for that. Here, same thing, elimination, and then calculator as well because X, Y equals number. All right, let's look at just a couple more examples here. So I have y equals, I have a few y equals problems here. Let's see if I can find one. They don't really have one where they have two y equals on here. This one actually is really good for elimination because look right there, that y eliminates really well. And then right here you'd have to, this one you'd have to do something to it. So this one would kind of be good for elimination because of that. But then also the x isn't really far away from being solved. All I'd have to do is add 2y to both sides, and then I'd have that solved. So that's kind of okay for substitution. All right, so kind of, number 8 is debatable. But if it's solved, then it's good for substitution. If it's lined up, it's good for elimination. If it's the x, the y, and then equals, and then the number, it's good for your calculator. Good one to put into the calculator. And again, here's the steps for it if you missed it. All right, here's the steps right here. Second matrix, go to edit and select a 1, meaning, select one of your matrix options, input your values, hit second matrix math, RREF, and then of course enter. And then second matrix again, go to names, go to the matrix that you created, and hit enter, and then hit enter again. So basically just a lot of hitting enter in order to make your matrix and do the RREF thingy. Okay. Yeah, so that's everything that I've got for you guys today. That's how you figure out whether you should do elimination, substitution, graphing, or calculator. So in another video, I'll probably do some actual worked out examples and work them out in a couple different ways. Probably look at some graphing problems, ones that are good for graphing, and then solve them by graphing, and then solve them by elimination and substitution. And maybe do a calculator example as well in a future video. So this has been Mr. Kyle at Myers Mathematics. And then of course, if you haven't checked out my free PDF, it's on my website, myersmathematics.com, the 5 math mistakes everyone makes and how to avoid them. It's a free PDF guide to help you to, just not make any more math mistakes. So I want you to check that out. It should be pretty helpful for you. And of course, if this video was helpful, give it a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in another time.